there's a problem that needs solving. This supplier has got a solution that can solve that problem. They've proven it can deliver value, and they've talked a bit about risk, and they've worked all that through. And finally, the budget holder says, I think we've got something here that maybe we could do together. But of course, we're a large incorporated company in the US. We're a listed company. We can't just award the contract because it's $250,000.
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman, Stan Robinson Jr., and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast. I'm Stan Robinson, Chief Coaching Officer here at Social Sales Link. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mike Lander. Mike is a former procurement director and now the CEO of Piscari Limited, where he specializes in helping B2B agencies and professional services firms improve their sales negotiation strategies, especially when it comes to dealing with procurement teams. He's got over 26 years of experience and has negotiated deals worth over 500 million pounds. I believe I read that right, which does that translate over to $600 million?
Yeah, that's about right.
So.
That's an aggregate across all the deals.
Yep. And Mike offers deep insights into the challenges that sales professionals face when dealing with RFPs, client briefs, and procurement experts. His focus on negotiation skills, sales consultancy, and procurement insights have made him a go-to advisor for business leaders looking to improve their commercial deals. Mike, welcome.
Dan, thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to this very much.
Yes, same here. So the first question that we ask all of our guests is, what does making sales social mean to you?
I think to me, it's a very human thing, which is, as long as mankind's been on the planet, we've interacted with each other, we've told stories to each other, we've engaged with each other, we've formed relationships with each other. And selling in many ways is no different, is you're trying to build a relationship. What's changed is the medium. So, social selling now, yes, obviously LinkedIn is a key platform for me. I don't do much selling on other social platforms because most of my audience is on LinkedIn. But I also think conferences, breakfasts, workshops, effectively, you're inviting people that you have a loose relationship with into an environment whereby you want to build a closer relationship with them. And that, in my book, is kind of social selling.
Yes, exactly. We are on the same page in terms of that and the importance of LinkedIn as a tool for that.
Exactly.
Because we focus on building relationships, and LinkedIn is simply a tool that you can use to find the right people, start to engage with them on the platform, start to develop that relationship, which you will eventually take off of LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. Because you want to own your own list. I think as we both know, Stan, that if you leave your marketing in the hands of an algorithm, well, don't be surprised when things change.
Very well said. Very well said. Good. Well, I was looking forward to speaking with you because your background is somewhat unique because you have an extensive procurement background and are now helping sales professionals deal with procurement. Can you just talk a little bit about your journey from procurement into the coaching, training, and teaching side, consulting?
Sure. So I was, back in the day, Stan, I was an engineer. So I started life as an engineer, building technology solutions, and then got into banking, and then got into consulting. From when I was in consulting to, only a few years ago, I was very much on the buy side. So I ended up as being a kind of procurement consultant or a strategy consultant, but involved in lots of kind of procurement activity in all sorts of guises. I was also a partner in a consulting firm. Me and a colleague ran our own consulting firm that was in procurement. So lots of buy-side experience. Because if you look at what a procurement person does, so what is the role of a procurement director? Because many of your audience may not meet them yet, but as they scale, then they will. Well, if you looked at all of the costs involved in a big business, then you've got obviously headcount cost is a very large part.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got all of the non-headcount cost. Some of that's direct goods and services. So if you're a supermarket, then your direct goods would be apples and bananas and oranges and potatoes and all sorts of stuff. And that's what we would call direct procurement. You're buying direct goods. And then there's all the indirect stuff. There's marketing services and IT infrastructure and building infrastructure and HR. And all those are called indirect. They're indirect because they don't directly touch the customer. So they're indirect. And so people like me would get involved in managing that indirect spend. All of that marketing, IT infrastructure, HR infrastructure, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what made you decide to change from the buy side to helping the sales community deal with your peers?
That kind of poacher, or that gamekeeper turned poacher, as some people like to call it. So I've gone from one side of the fence to the other. And what happened? Well, I'd been involved in procurement for 20, 25 years, whatever it was, and was looking for a change. And I was talking to my wife one day, who's a very talented marketing CMO, an ex-agency leader. And we were just talking, and she said, well, why don't you go and work with sellers? Sellers are always interested in how do buyers work?
Absolutely.
And I thought that's a good idea, as most of my wife's ideas are far better ideas than mine. So
I can relate.
Yep. So I decided to start a consultancy specializing in working with salespeople, giving them insights into how buyers work. And although, yes, I see things through a procurement kind of stakeholders lens, obviously it's wider than that. So I see things very much as a buyer, because all of my work was involved with people that owned the money. So let me explain, Stan. A lot of people think procurement, if they're involved in a process, it's their budget. Well, it's not. It's the stakeholders' budget. So it might be the HR directors, or it might be the IT directors, could be the marketing directors' money. My job is to help them manage a process that allows us to procure the best supplier to deliver the outcomes that we need and solve the problems that we've got in the most cost-efficient and the most low-risk way, whilst driving innovation, quality, diversity, inclusion, sustainability. So I'm the kind of the guide and the governance person to the stakeholder whose budget it is, who's got a problem they need to solve. So whenever people out there are selling into a more complex stakeholder environment, just remember, procurement don't own the money, but we are very influential. So if you avoid us, if you ignore us, if you pretend we don't exist, and the deal's bigger, like over $150,000, then that's probably going to go wrong at some point.
Okay. You have covered a lot just in that. Given what you've said, what do sales professionals need to know about the mindset and thought process of someone on the buying side? You mentioned a number of considerations, but the question is, what do salespeople need to know, and are there common mistakes that you see? That you can help them avoid?
So I think if I look at it from a buying kind of community perspective, then I think one of the first things is around risk. Let's assume, Stan, that you're selling into a bigger organization. Let's say it's over 100 million of turnover. If it's over $100 million of turnover, it's probably got procurement people in the organization. It'll certainly have functional heads, and it'll certainly have bigger budgets to spend on bigger services. So if you look at and maybe it's a private company, maybe it's a public company. And if you think about that, just logically, if we were sat down having a coffee, Stan, I'd be talking about, well, obviously one of the problems is risk. One of the problems for big organizations is, how do you manage risk? Could be operational risk. It could be financial risk, could be reputational risk. There's all sorts of risk involved. So the job of that buying community is to, yes, pick a supplier that can solve the problem and deliver the outcome, but also at a manageable level of risk. Because it's no good picking Stan Robinson Inc., who's a one-man band, to solve a particular problem that's got a big impact on the business. Because if Stan falls ill, or if Stan goes off and does something else, or he gets distracted, or he's not available for 2 or 3 weeks, we've got a problem.
Yep.
So I'm not about to bet the business on Stan, the one-man band, for a deal that might generate $50 million worth of revenue. Because Stan, if it was your business, would you? No, you probably wouldn't.
Absolutely not.
No. So just thinking about things as a salesperson through the buyer's lens of risk management might start to give people different insights about how they approach deals. For example, if they haven't worked with the organization before, and this is their first deal, and let's say it's $1 billion company, not a $100 million company, the better way to start is probably in a lower risk way. Find a niche, find a very specific problem that's quite difficult to solve, and work with your stakeholders on the client side to scope out a project that solves that problem for a $50K fee. So you take something relatively low risk with a lower value outcome, but gives you both time to find out how you work together. And then when that's worked, then you can start talking about bigger deals.
Yes. So you help to manage the risk by improving their comfort level in dealing with you and showing that, and that way they get to know you, you get to know them, and you can eventually move to bigger projects as long as you do a great job on the initial low risk project. Great. Can you talk a little bit about using, say, tools like LinkedIn or Sales Navigator to identify these stakeholders beyond procurement? Because you mentioned that there's the procurement, but they're the people who own the budget as well.
Yeah, and there's also the users.
Yes.
There's a user community. I've been involved in many deals before whereby we've been buying something and it's been big, and we've got all sorts of people involved because users obviously touch the product we're going to buy. And if the users don't like the product, then clearly that'd be a bad purchase. So I think just even some basic stuff, Stan, like you go onto LinkedIn. I mean, Sales Navigator is better. So you can go into Navigator. You can look at the company. And obviously companies are complex. The bigger they are, the more complex they are. If you type in IBM into Navigator, you'll probably get, I don't know, hundreds of IBMs come up because there's all sorts of divisions within IBM that do different things. So first of all, make sure you're thinking about the right component, the right function, the right business unit within your target brand. And then just start to work your way through and go, okay, who are the senior people? How are they connected? We're selling an IT solution. So who's the IT director? Well, who's the customer experience director? Because they might be involved if it's an IT solution for solving customer problems. Who's the procurement person? Who's the finance person? Because if it's a big deal, finance are going to get involved. And you start drawing your stakeholder map. And then you work out, who do I know? Who don't I know? Who do I know that knows someone? And then you start working your way around your stakeholder map.
Okay. One thing you did mention about the danger of ignoring procurement. You may have good relations with all the other stakeholders. Are there certain things that salespeople need to avoid doing in order that may either raise a red flag with procurement, or, for lack of a better term, turn them off? So they may have great relations with everyone else, but they may do something that, kills the deal from a procurement standpoint.
Yeah, so let's take an example. So let's say the deal's worth $250,000. And let's say someone's been working on it for a year. So salespeople have been working on this deal for a year. They've been meeting different stakeholders. They've been engaging with them. They've been building solutions. And they think now they're at the stage of, there's a problem that needs solving. This supplier has got a solution that can solve that problem. They've proven it can deliver value. And they've talked a bit about risk. And they've worked all that through. And finally, the budget holder says, I think we've got something here that maybe we could do together. But of course, we're a large incorporated company in the US. We're a listed company. We can't just award the contract because it's $250,000. So you'd have to go through procurement. At that point, I'll introduce you. So if I was the HR director, I'll introduce you to procurement. And all of a sudden, you're going to go to procurement and go, hi, I've been sent by the IT director. We've agreed this kind of deal. He said, I need to come and see you, or she said, I need to come and see you and work out what to do next. So imagine if you were the procurement director, Stan, how would you feel at that stage?
I'm just now hearing about this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just now hearing about this. Oh, and you look like a supplier we already work with. In fact, you look like 10 suppliers we already work with. And they're on my preferred suppliers list. And you're not on my actually, I'm pretty busy. Bye.
Wow. Okay.
And that's it. Now, I might give the IT director a ring and go, this person turned up. They said that they've done a deal with you and that I was just kind of like to have a discussion with them. What's going on? That's not how we work. You know, it's not how we work. We're a listed company. We're big. We've got processes to follow. We've got governance. We've got risk to manage. And that I'd then have a conversation with them. It wouldn't normally get to that stage. One of my key roles was build relationships with the internal budget holders. So we work in categories, Stan. So like I'd work in professional services or I'd work in IT services. And what part of your job is to build relationships with your stakeholder community. That's part of the role of procurement. And then you don't get these problems. Because then when they've got a problem they want to solve, I say to them, if you've got a problem you want to solve, give me a ring, drop me an email, we'll have a discussion. Let's see how I can help. And that avoids, lots of confusion, lots of sales cycles going out the window, lots of ghosting that salespeople complain about. So although it sounds counterintuitive, if it's a bigger deal, if you're a new supplier and it's a bigger deal and you've not worked with that company before, I'd say to them, what we found in this kind of environment when this happens is if we get to the end of this cycle and let's say it's 6 or 9 months, we go and meet procurement and then it all goes wrong. So why don't we meet them at the beginning? Let's just do a meet and greet, tell them what we do, have a conversation, and let's see what they've got to say. Because ultimately, they're the ones that are going to raise or instruct someone to raise a purchase order. They're the ones that are going to negotiate a contract. They're the ones that will negotiate the schedules and the KPIs and the SLAs. Let's get them involved early on.
Yep. So get procurement involved early.
Yep.
The salesperson, just in terms of the flow, is it best for the salesperson to ask the stakeholder that they're dealing with, hey, who's your counterpart in procurement and why don't we set up a
just
call with all
introduce us, fire
us?
an email, and we'll have a conversation. There is a time when you wouldn't get procurement involved, Stan, and I've seen this work for people, which is, let's say it's only a $20,000 piece of work. The budget holder's probably got discretionary spend.
Okay.
And they can probably issue what we used to call a side letter agreement, which is like basically a one-off deal, work with a supplier. You don't go on the preferred suppliers list, but you can get paid. Yeah.
Mhm.
So as long as it's a legally binding side letter agreement that's been endorsed by procurement, thresholds have all been agreed, and you're not, and the stakeholders not doing it every week because that would be in breach of
Yeah.
our governance rules.
Mhm.
Then that is a way in where you don't need to meet procurement. But just
Mhm.
check with the stakeholder. If we don't work with procurement and we do a bit of work with you off a side letter, how do we get paid? Because normally procurement or the purchasing department, depending upon how mature the organization is, could be called sourcing, could be called procurement. Someone's got to raise a purchase order, and then someone's got to basically say, yes, we can get paid when we send an invoice in. How does that work?
Yep. Good to be aware of that up front. Because
Yeah,
I imagine,
otherwise you're going to invoice a company and find that you can't get paid because no one's actually, vetted you as a supplier, checked that you're working ethically, and that you meet all of our standards. If no one's had a chance to do that and you just raise an invoice, well, you won't get paid.
Mhm.
Not for some
Okay.
time.
Okay. Great. There are multiple questions that I would love to ask, but I have to be cognizant of the time. One, in your experience, you have a lot of experience working with RFPs.
Yeah.
But not every purchase involves an RFP. They're depending on what can you give any advice to salespeople who are working with RFPs and make the distinction between, okay, if it's an RFP that I'm dealing with, what are some things I definitely need to do versus, okay, this is a purchase that does not involve an RFP. What do I need to do in there?
So a good friend of mine, a guy called Blair Enns, who's in Canada, he does win without pitching. He wrote a book called Win Without Pitching. So people want advice on how to win without going through an RFP and without pitching in a pitch panel. Read Blair's book, which was all about win without pitching.
Win without pitching.
It's called
Okay.
the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, I think. But if you take the one whereby it is an RFP, do some basic stuff first. So qualification, your biggest success factor with an RFP driven purchasing decision is qualification. So take an example, Stan. So the first thing the salesperson gets is this RFP turns up. So the RFP turns up from someone that they don't know, but it's a reputable company. They've checked the company out. It's reputable, and it's more than reputable. It's big, and it's a big trophy brand. Salesperson wants to bid for it. It's a big trophy brand. However, that RFP has gone to, let's say, 5 suppliers. The first one is probably the incumbent supplier. The second and third supplier are probably ones that we know of already, have worked with, know of, are trusted. The fourth and fifth ones are randoms, probably off the internet, maybe via referral from a friend, via someone, via a podcast, could be all sorts. If you're in 4 or 5, do you know what your chances of winning are? If you're the 4th or 5th supplier selected.
Say less than 10%, and that may be generous.
Yeah, it might be generous. I'd say about between 3 and 5%. So you might want to say, we don't know anyone in the organization. It's arrived randomly. It's a great brand. Let's no bid, but let's no bid in a very specific way. Let's go back to them and say, we really appreciate being selected as part of the bid process. Thank you. However, in our experience, if we know no one in the organization at this stage in this kind of deal, we tend to win 1 in about 30. So respectfully, we're going to decline to bid. What we'd like to do, though, is we'd like to give you some insights into the problem you're trying to solve and a different way of solving it. And we'd like to give you maybe some ideas about market pricing. Would that be helpful?
That is brilliant. Okay. So
you've not spent 30 hours writing a proposal. You've not raised expectations at board level of who that we're going to win a deal with XYZ brand that's a Fortune 100. But you have started to build a relationship. You've started social selling. building trust with a third party that maybe one day you'll do business with.
Yes. Wow, that is brilliant. And one of the things we talk about at Social Sales Link is slowing down the outreach to speed up the income and the outcome rather. And it's a long term, because you know that you're not going to win that deal. But as you said, it's an opportunity to start a relationship if you do it right.
Yeah.
So that is brilliant. Last question, and I reserve the right to see if we may be able to do a sequel episode at some point in the future, because this has been
thoroughly
enjoyable. Been awesome. We talked about the RFP, the other types of purchases that don't involve an RFP. Any advice there to sales professionals?
Yeah. So I was trained by KPMG many years ago. I was trained by McKinsey. I was trained by PwC. And I learned huge amounts about the consultative sell, about how do you work with a client on a consultative sales approach. We used to call it issues-based consulting, Stan. What that was for the non-RFP driven stuff, the best way to start is start with a good discovery call. My biggest tip to your audience in a non-RFP driven purchasing approach with a potential client, you've got a set of questions that you're going to ask. Don't make it too long. Maybe, 5 to 10 questions. But make those questions insightful. Make them think them through really hard. Make the client think about something they've never thought about. Give them an insight that they haven't thought about. So I was talking to a guy this morning called Andy Bounds. Andy Bounds is a very, very, very clever sales consultant. And he said to me, try 3 things when you're doing that kind of discovery. Tell stories, teach, give a timeline. So tell a story about, I've solved this problem before. We solved it in this kind of way. It looked like your kind of problem. So I'm credible. Then teach them something they don't know. When we solved that problem, we found 3 or 4 really big issues. These are the big issues. You may not have seen them yet, but they're coming your way. And then thirdly, typically, implementation goes in 3 stages. It goes with a diagnostic, a design, and then a rollout. And that typically takes between 12 and 18 months.
Okay.
So you started to shape something and you found out, is it a problem that they've got? They now know that you're credible. They're now inquisitive. They're thinking, maybe I should have a follow-up conversation.
Yes. So that requires a good deal of preparation and thought on your part beforehand so that you can bring some insights that they have not thought before. And that's how you position yourself as a resource and distinguish yourself from competitors.
Yeah. If you've got 20 minutes with someone, it's the first time, you better make it an impactful 20 minutes. I've got to remember, Stan, when I've dropped the call and it's a week later. There's something called, as a last tip for your listeners, have you ever heard, Stan, of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve?
I have, but I'll let you go through it. I just remember, you hear, learn, or somehow are exposed to something, and how much of it you remember a day, a week, a month later.
Correct. So that's exactly it. What Ebbinghaus found in 1887, I think it was, that within 4 days of learning something, whatever it might be, you've lost 80% of what you learned. So when you're on that sales call and your audience is talking to someone, a week later, they'll have forgotten 80%.
80%.
So the key is the 20% they remember has to be really, really outstanding. Has to really stick in their mind and make them think differently.
Awesome. Great. Well, that is a great point and place for us to wrap up. Mike, I appreciate your time. As I said, I could keep asking questions for quite some time.
It'd be great, Stan. We could have a great conversation over a coffee. That'd be brilliant.
Yes, this has been extremely insightful. For our listeners, Mike, who would like to learn more about you, your business, how you can help them, where would you like to direct them, be it LinkedIn, website?
So I think there's 3 things. Simple one is LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, message me. Second one's our website. So piscari.com. You can sign up to our Insights series. Every fortnight we send out an email with some interesting insights in it. And then thirdly, I've got a podcast. So listen to me on my podcast, which is called Higgle, Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Okay. Thank you for spelling Higgle for me, because that was not intuitive. And Piscari is PISCARI.com.
Correct.
Wonderful. Great. Well, Mike, again, thank you so much. I know our listeners will get a lot of value from the insights that you shared. And I look forward to the next time.
So do I. Thanks, Dan. Always up for another time. Definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye now.
Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.